what I didn't do. Bam. Okay. That would have been awful. All right. Take two. All right, everybody. So welcome back to Black in White Spaces 2. Last Saturday, had a conversation with my son about what it's like to be a young Black youth in Rancho Cucamonga in white spaces. And so I felt really connected to the issue because I once was a youth in growing up in white spaces. And so now as a mom and as a woman, I am yet again a Black woman, very much operating in white spaces. And these are my girls. So let me give you a little bit of breakdown about this uniquely blended family and probably why sometimes I'm a little overprotective. So everybody who knows my story, but for those who are watching who don't, I have one biological child, but I have 4 heartbeats. And so they all came into my life at different times in life. Tiara lost her mother when she was 10 years old. Jasmine lost her mother. Jasmine lost her mother when she was 12. And so they went to my mom's daycare. So I've been in their lives since they were 3 months and 6 weeks old. And then my oldest, Caitlin, is my goddaughter. But in our family, there's no goddaughters. There's no, bonus daughter. It's just, these are my children. And so I think one of the reasons that I'm extremely overprotective, like all parents, but of these kids particularly, is because as a collective unit, we've been through so much trauma. And so the added layer onto them losing their parents and then Caitlin and both Jalen kind of having to go through it with them is the fact that they're Black growing up in these white spaces. And so now they're both in college and they're young women. And it is just, it's like an added layer of worry to an already very unique situation. So again, my name is Wendy Whitmore, owner of Truth Healing Evolution Counseling Services. This is my heartbeat TT, aka Tiara. This is Jazz, and aka Jasmine. So, you want to take it away, Miss Jewel?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Jewel Patterson, and I'll be kind of facilitating or moderating this conversation. And a little bit about me is I also obviously am Black. And I grew up in a lot of places, but I went to majority, all the schools that I went to had a majority white population. So I've had to deal with kind of this weird double consciousness, right? Of trying to figure out how to fit or not even how to fit, but how to be as a Black person in these white spaces as well. So I was super excited when Wendy was like, yo, can you moderate this conversation? And especially because of everything that's been going on, I think it's really important for us to sit down and kind of unpack these conversations in this way. So,
asking the questions, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I haven't posted about this at all because I was waiting for us to do the live. But when I tell you that I am proud of my kids, man, these kids who are not necessarily children anymore. This one right here, this is my
come on, TT.
I give Tiara the hardest time, probably because she is definitely a combination of both her mother Janine and myself when it comes to Janine was very social, very outgoing. And then I have a little bit of a rebellious spirit where when I see something, I just want to jump in. When I was younger, I didn't always think things out. I just had the passion and the drive. But yesterday, I was unavailable for work to be there. But Tiara, along with some of her friends, collectively put together a protest in Upland. And it was just amazing to sit back and watch and to just watch her just step into her light. So, I already gave her accolades and hugged on her and kissed on her yesterday. But I want to publicly acknowledge that I couldn't be more proud of the young woman that she is, stepping into her own. I give her such a hard time. But truth be told, man, what a moment. What a moment. What a day. Like just,
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, let's start there. Let's start there then. I know there's been a lot of tension that's been coming up, obviously, around in the IE and in Rancho and Upland. When people are trying to do peaceful protests, they're met with this tension and this backlash from the community around. And so I'm wondering so first, Tiara, like what made you want to get involved with organizing this peaceful protest that happened? And then how was it?
When we want to get involved, my friend hit me. Originally, it was him and his friends. And I know organizing a protest, there's a lot of plan, a lot of strategy that you have to put into it, a lot of thinking. So I just decided to hop in because everybody has their own way of doing what they do, how they strategize. So I was like, oh, let me hop in, see what we can do. What was the other question?
How was it?
Oh, it was successful. We thought about a lot of outcomes that could happen, and none of them happened. So that was a good thing. We successfully marched. It was very peaceful. The police actually helped us direct traffic, making sure nobody got hit by any of the oncoming traffic. So it was good.
That's good. And Jazz, were you able to make it too?
Yeah, I got the privilege of participating in the protest that she organized, and it was just really like seamless and like really like it was really like a collective effort, and it went really well. And I'm like a lot of people, like how many, like 500?
It was like more than 500.
Yeah, like 500 people from the community.
That's dope.
And it just went really seamlessly. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, that is dope. That is really dope. I heard a lot of good things about it too. So I'm glad that you all were able to, like you said, come together and just protest without being met with violence. So that was amazing. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up, Wendy, for you was I know that in the last video that you did like this, one of the questions came up about how do you raise free children? Like, how do you raise your children to be free? And so, right, let's start there because the reason I want to start here is because I know that there has to be, or I'm assuming that there has to be some heaviness around letting your children protest in when these times are so tense right now, right? And you don't know what the outcome may be. So I'm wondering if you can speak on how was it for you to like allow your children to go out there and express themselves in this way?
So that's twofold because my initial response was hell no. Use my language. That was my initial response because of when you work in the community and when you work specifically as a therapist, you hear things that most people don't hear, right? And then I also did a lot of group homework at one point. And there's just things that I'm aware of that most people don't get to be made aware of. So the mom in me was like, nah, like this can't. And then that's why I contacted you. It was like, if they're going to do this, then they need to have guidance. Because the other part about raising free children is that you give them to the freedom to make choices. And even though they're adults, there's still this mothering that happens. I mean, I'm 40 and I still call my mother for things at 40 years old, right? So you never stop mothering no matter how old your children get. But I believe in order to raise free children, I think one of the things with them is that they're actually kind of leading by example. I've always been extremely vocal and active. And when they were younger, I would drag them to everything, whether they wanted to go or not. And but I think that, and I run. Clearly, I have my own practice, but I also put on a lot of wellness events. And so, I mean, I don't have a crew, so this is the crew. And so they just really are leading by example. And it's hard to raise free children when you want them to lead by example, but then you also want to protect and mother them. So there was this constant tug of war of emotions that I literally couldn't eat, sleep. I spent most of the week crying up until Friday because I want them to be who they are. But like I said with Jalen last week, but I want to know that they're going to make it home. And that is something that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real threat. And that is something that's heavy, and that's why it's important for us to unpack and have these conversations, because I'm sure you're not the only one who's thinking this way. Well, I know you're not, because my mom tells me all the time, right? So it's difficult.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, for Jasmine and Tiara, like how did y'all feel being out there, knowing that this is not the protest? From what I heard, was predominantly Black, and it was, I would like to say, led by Black youth, and so that was amazing and powerful. But it's in a space, right, that's, the population is not predominantly Black. So how was that for y'all, just knowing that, like, all the tension that's been happening, you know, all of the violence that other protests have been met with? How was it for you, like, preparing for that?
Stressful. Always very stressful, because there's so many outcomes and possibilities that you don't know is going to happen, that can happen. So you have to have a plan for every one of the outcomes that can possibly happen. And it was just really stressful trying to figure out, like, okay, well, what if they do this? Okay, we have to do this. Okay, but there's also this, so we have to do that. Like, it was very, very stressful, but
I don't know. I was just like scared of being met with like a violent reaction. That was my biggest fear. I was like, we're not doing anything wrong. We're out here trying to protest and advocate for ourselves and our rights, but then yet still we're still met with like such violence and such hatred. And I think that's really difficult to like overcome and say, like, even if we are met with this situation, even if we are met with this type of people, we still have to go out and do these things, because it's for us. Like, if no one else is going to do it for us, we have to do it. So.
That's powerful. So in the face of this, like, adversity and fear and uncertainty, y'all were still like, look, we gotta go get it, because, you know, we don't got us, then who got us, kind of thing. Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah.
That's the hard part about raising free children that are Black in a white space, is that as much as I didn't want them to do it, I know that they had to. And so there's this added weight, like, of being a mom, especially when you're a mom to specifically two children that you didn't that you didn't birth, but yet their parents entrusted them to you. I took that very seriously, and I take that very seriously. So the same way I would protect Jalen is the same way I would protect Caitlin, the oldest, and Jasmine and Tiara. And so when Tori asked last week, how do you raise free children? But there's no real answer other than you support them in their dreams, and you equip them with the tools to face a world that don't like them.
Yeah. And I just know that feeling, from all the moms that I talk to, resonates. And even me, just knowing I have cousins, you know, I have students, I have niece and nephew, like, it resonates with all of us. And that's why, like you said, we have to. So I want to kind of back up a little bit, because we know that this moment didn't just happen. It didn't just pop up. It was obviously, there's 401. Okay, I won't forget the one. But there's years and years of this that created this kind of tension, and that created this we have to do it ourselves kind of attitude. So I want to back up a little bit and just think about, I know, Wendy, you shared last time about, you know, you just being Black and raised in these white spaces. And I want to know, for you all, Jazz and Tiara, how has that been for you? So whether that's in the school that you're currently in, or whether that's in, you know, growing up, how that was for you to be Black and white spaces?
I think for me, like in school, it was a constant like navigation of like where do I fit in? Where is it safe for me to say certain things? Like the code switching thing was a big deal. It was like, okay, at school I'm this way, and this way, and then at home I can be however I want, or at daycare I can be however I want. So I think it's definitely like a lot of navigation and constantly being on guard and just like always like trying to like shift myself or kind of like mold myself or maneuver myself into a way that I can be successful in both places.
Okay. So you kind of just to recap, you kind of like had to navigate who you were in each one of those spaces. It wasn't just like
that person isn't the same. They might have commonalities, but I kind of feel like two different people almost. I'm like, okay, over here I'm this Jasmine, and over here I'm this Jasmine. So it's really difficult, to be honest, and kind of tiring and exhausting to just constantly have to like change who I am around certain people because it's essential to my survival. So
okay, go ahead.
I want to say school-wise, I felt a lot of like doubt. I don't say I was like code switching because I'm just a very quiet person. Like when I'm very to myself and I'm very observant. So I had to like see who I could talk to that's gonna benefit me. Because a lot of like advisors that I went to at school, a lot of them didn't really benefit me in a way. So I kind of had to navigate and see who could really help me. In classroom space, since I am a STEM major, there's not really a lot of Black people in the classroom. So I just kind of felt like the outcast, which doubt came in, and I was like, well, maybe this is not for me. Like, but I had to snap back, like, no, I'm not gonna let this get to me. Like, I'm gonna make it. They gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. If they can make it, I can make it. So yeah, just being observant as to who I can really talk to that can benefit me and help me move successfully.
Do you think that that's hard though? Because not hard. Do you think that it was easier for you to do it? That's what I meant. Because you came from Ranch Cucamonga. So it's like, this has always been a place where you had to figure out who was really Team Tiara. So when you got to college, I mean, it was almost like a repeat on a larger scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I thought it was very difficult because I didn't really know anybody in San Francisco. I didn't know how the professors were, so a lot of scoping out.
Okay. And did you have to do that same scoping out when you were in Rancho?
Yes and no. I feel like being out here, like I wasn't really as intelligent when I got to college. So it was different. It was different.
What do you mean that?
Okay.
Like I wasn't very aware.
You think we showed you a lot?
No, I don't think y'all showed me a lot. I think I just never paid attention.
So when you were in Rancho, you were able to not pay attention to all those things, the different elements that might have been happening?
Yeah, it wasn't really on my mind. When I got to college, it was like a whole new world. I was like, oh, this is different.
Do you think that's like
so you had
the community and your family, like you have a daycare, like you had spaces where you could go. It's like, okay, I can be Tiara here. But then when you go to college and like your family's not right next to you and they're like, you can't just like drive quick, like 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going here to escape from everywhere else. It kind of makes it a little bit more difficult.
Oh, and the daycare that you're referencing, my mom started a daycare when I was 19. And literally that's how like so many people became family. So shout out to Ruth Jackson. But I do think that that's true though, Jazz, that because the daycare, I mean, like it was predominantly Black because, Black people tend to take their children to somewhere where they feel safe and comfortable, right? And so, when the kids had, like, it was kind of like their fallback. So even if they didn't have friends at school, when they came to daycare was like this was their family, not just their friends, but I mean, these kids have known each other since they were infants, like in diapers, and so I think that, that's important to have those safe spaces. I'm glad to hear on one hand that you didn't feel it, but on the other hand, it kind of makes me sad because it didn't prepare you for the rest of the world. That's always like you think we sheltered you. Or do you also think it's possible for the both of you that there were other traumas that took precedent? I mean, honestly, I know it's not something we probably want to talk about, but I think maybe that might be part of it, is that those traumas were bigger. I mean, you were 10 and you were 12 when you lost your mom. So it's like, trauma a lot of times will make other situations that are right in front of you not seem like a big deal until you kind of start to heal from that trauma. And I think that that's something that people in general have to think about, because they'll go, oh, I didn't know that this was such a big deal to you. But I think that what people don't realize is that, we're always Black, right? But when you have other traumas, those kind of take precedent, but it doesn't negate the fact that this stuff is still happening to you and to people that look like you. And so when those things have kind of settled in life, it's like you kind of open your eyes brighter. And I'm not brighter, it's open them bigger so you can see it a lot more clearly. But it's not that it hasn't been around you the whole time, because people will act like that. Oh, I didn't know that you were so passionate about Black stuff. And it's like, well, for the last whatever years of my life, I've been trying to grow a business. I've been trying to step into a role of playing mom, or not playing mom, but step into a role that wasn't originally mine. Growing a business. I mean, like, there's so many other things that I've always known who I was, but other things kind of had taken precedent. And now that things are kind of settled in my life and in their lives to a degree, this is who I've always been. I'm just a lot more vocal about it at this point.
Okay, so you're saying basically you're a lot more vocal, and maybe Tiara, you were more aware because you were able to step away from other things that took precedent in your life. So you were a lot more aware at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you became aware, and I'm going back to kind of what Jasmine said. You said you had to like change who you were because it was essential to your survival, right? Did you experience that, Tiara, when you got to school? Like the desire to change in spaces because you felt threatened, maybe?
I don't think so. I feel like I changed. Like, I'm always who I am, where I am, no matter like where I'm at. So no, I don't think I really changed much because I've always been a very quiet, observant person. I'm always going to be a very quiet, observant person. I just take notes everywhere I go.
Okay, so you take notes. Okay, Jasmine, I wanted to go back and have you kind of talk a little bit more about how it's essential to your survival to change, if you need to change, or to code switch.
Yeah, I think it's just like maybe like in the academic setting, you use more proper language or like less African American vernacular versus when you're like with your friends in the dining hall. Like, I can speak however I want because this is a safe space and they're not going to judge me or stigmatize me for using that language or just being who I am. So I think it just changes. Like, it's like when people, like, sometimes you answer the phone, you put on your white voice depending on who it is. It's like, oh, hi, my name's Jasmine Ravel, and blah, blah, blah. And so versus when you pick up the phone, you're talking to your sister or your mom or something, it's different. It's just small things that I guess make me seem less threatening to, like, unfortunately, like, it sounds really bad when I say it like that.
I know, but but that's so crazy. That's the truth.
It's like small things to better my chances. It's like it sounds terrible, but like, unfortunately, it's the way of the world and it's the world that we live in. And this world is not designed for us. We weren't supposed to be here. Like, we weren't supposed to make it this far. Like, slavery, like, after that, they were like, okay, like, oh, there's a lot of them. Like, what are we going to do with them now?
Absolutely.
So
That's a smart, I'm not smart, but that's a really good point. Like, I think that one of the problems with white spaces and with whiteness, right? And don't get me wrong for my white allies that are watching this. This is not like bash white people. This is literally like I don't think your ancestors thought about what Black people were supposed to be in the future. I think that when they brought us here 401 years ago, in their mind, we were a tool. We were a means to an end. You know, J.P. Morgan Chase, Tiffany and Co.
Oh no,
America, Liberty Mutual, all these huge companies, right, funded slave ships, right? And they got their return on investment for the people in here on finance. You guys, we know what the ROI is, right? The return on investment was the fact that slaves were going to breed more money, aka give birth to more babies that are slaves, right? So I think that once that concept of capitalism started to grow, then they realized, you're right, Jazz, that they got a whole slew of us. It's like, oh dang, what are we gonna do with them? Oh, we're gonna put our foot on their neck. I think that's why the thing about George Floyd really bothers me, is because slavery was like a foot on our neck. And then they decided, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't own them technically. So then Jim Crow was a foot on our neck. And I mean, like, so the foot on our neck has literally always been there. And literally George Floyd, and I don't want to know the man's name because I don't want to obsess over it, but the murderer of George Floyd literally took his life by putting his foot on this man's neck. And it's like, okay, America, when you gonna let us breathe?
Yeah.
Like when? Like at what point? At what point do we get to breathe? At what point do I get to walk out when somebody chooses not to Google me? Because Wendy L. Whitmore, I know it don't sound like a Black woman. And when I walk out into the reception area to meet a new client, and the look on their face, sometimes it's just like, you know what? You here for help, but you want to judge me based on because a Black woman walked out. Like,
wow.
What do you want me to do with that? Like, why should I not be angry about that?
Yeah, honestly.
Frustrating.
Honestly. Yeah, it is very frustrating. And we as you're talking about this, something came up for me. Like, we come into this world not knowing all of this history, right? But somehow we all come to the same awareness point. Somehow we all get there to where we're like, something ain't right. And I got a code switch because y'all don't like me if I do say this and I don't do this and I don't, you know what I mean? So somehow on our journeys, although we didn't come out this way knowing this, we understand, okay, it's not for me. This is not for me. This isn't a space for me, X, Y, and Z. And so when did y'all come to the awareness that you were Black in a white space? Like when, right? Because it doesn't always, what was the moment for you? Because I know for me, I went to Grand Terrace Elementary and I was 8 years old and I got called a nigger for the first time. And that, I think, wasn't the first time, but that was a defining moment where I was like, oh, people really don't like me because I'm Black. So what was it? What do you think for y'all?
High school. Also high school. White. This kid, he had a camo shirt on, had a Confederate flag on it. On the back, it said Southern Lives Matter or something like that. And I think that same day, somebody had wrote the N-word on the concrete. And I was like,
wow,
we still doing this? We really still doing this?
Right, right.
For Tiara, when I realized that nothing had changed since I went to Altaloma High School, she was on prom court, right? And me and Dom, my husband, had shown up for the rally. And so we were sitting there and, you know, like it was, we were waiting for it to get started. And, you know, people and kids, some kids who had formerly gone to the school, you know, they come back, were sitting in the audience and they announced the prom court. And when her name was announced, this group of white kids with their parents had some comments. And the crazy thing is that when I was walking in, a young lady who my son used to play football with her little brother, she went to high school, was making comments. And I was like, really? Because the whole time from Pop Warner, when your little brother and my little brother was playing football, you was acting like, oh, we all, but now you mad because my black child is on prom court and you don't think she deserved to be on it? Pretty much is what she said. She was a cheerleader for Los Osos High School, back then. And so, but even so, that was then, and then that same day, or like less than an hour later, I'm hearing them like, oh my, she's on. But then she won. So it's like, actually they had 3 black prom queens that year. Camille Parker out to Loma High School, Tiara, and then I forget the name of the young lady at Rancho. But I was just like, wow, like from when I was here, and then when I was in high school, our prom queen was black. So we had me as a senior class president who was black, and then Mecca Beard, my ride or die to today, was the prom queen. And I remember people were mad about me being president, because I was going to make stuff too black for every, and her being the prom. And I'm just like, really?
Wow.
Like, and so 20 some years later, they dealing with the same thing? Sorry, Jasmine. I didn't cut you off, baby.
That was good.
Well, when did you realize you were black in a white space?
I don't know. I feel like it's like a culmination of moments. I don't think there's like one like huge moment that's like, oh, but like a culmination of small moments that makes you realize, oh, oh, this is what it really is like, and that people really, really, really don't like us. So how do you surpass that? How do you continue to go on with your life, even if like with the fact that people really, really, really don't like us, like truly like wish bad things on us, like they just don't like us for being black, which is something so trivial.
And the crazy thing is, the mom, I don't have an answer. I mean, not that I don't have an answer, but like I don't have an like, like it's like, oh, if you do A, B, and C, then you'll get this outcome, right? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, there's no formula other than to tell them in some cases, unfortunately, and I know I'm not the only black parent that has said this, put your head down and keep moving. Right?
That's the survival.
That's the survival. And no, it's not right. It is absolutely not right. But at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like, I just want them to make it home safe.
Yeah.
Like, I just want you to make it home. Like, I don't want you to be rebel. I just want you to make it home. Yeah, I know it's not right. Yeah, I know it sucks. Yeah, I know it doesn't feel good. I know that. I know.
Yeah. And so there's so many things that I want to bring up to whiteness making us feel too black in whatever context, or even like hair in white spaces. Like, how do you do your hair in white spaces? How does this come along? Right? There's so many, but I think overall, what I want to say is that I'm wondering if you all have noticed any differences between being a black woman in white spaces than a black man in white spaces. Like, do you see any differences or anything that any code switching methods that have to happen more for women than men, or X, Y, and Z?
Who want to take that one first?
And if you don't, I mean, you don't, but I want to.
That's not true. I just don't. I think that this is going to be a very unpopular statement. I think that, I'm about to be real transparent right now. I've had some moms say to me, Oh, y'all. This is the hard part about these kind of conversations. And I'm not worried about the backlash. I just know that it's a thing, but it's a thing that's not talked about. So I've had white clients, specifically women, when they start to get comfortable, I get it. You want to learn. So when you have a black therapist, you ask questions, and I get it. You want to learn, and I'm okay with having a dialogue. But there's been statements made about why black women are so angry, and black men are different, and I'm like, they're really not. They just operate a little differently. They're not as vocal as we are. As women tend to be a little more vocal. And so this angry black woman, constantly this angry black woman, that we get portrayed as. Psychology Today did an article, a whole cover feature years ago about the angry black woman. And, like really? Like, come on, Psychology Today. Like, really? Like for real. Like, for real. And there was a TV show called Being Mary Jane that was on, and they addressed this. And it's like, if I'm assertive, then I'm angry. But if a white woman is assertive, she's a go-getter. If I'm extremely vocal, I gotta be angry. If I'm passionate about something, then I'm way too emotional and I must have attitude. And it's like, I just can't be emotional. Like, I know the way I am right now, some people are like, oh my God, she's so aggressive. No, baby, it's not aggression. It's passion. Because people that look like me are being murdered, right? And people keep wanting to act like it's cool. So I'm not being aggressive. I'm not going to go out there and start beating on folks. I'm not aggressive, but I am angry. I am angry. That doesn't make me an angry black woman. That makes me angry because of the way the world treats us. But you get stigmatized as being, the angry. It's so crazy because even in high school, I would even this is something that black folks, we do it, right? We do it. Oh, why are you so angry? God. And it was something that, because I've always been passionate, I've always been vocal. It was something that even with black people, I have to be like, you think this is anger? Like, when did you ever see me go out and just start fights? That's not. I'm not that angry. I'm passionate because I'm willing to speak up, but you benefit from me speaking up, right? So I mean, it's like, it's almost like within our own, and then with the way white people see us, it's like, can I win?
Yeah. There is definitely something to be said about how whiteness operates in black spaces as well, right? There definitely is something. Yeah. So yeah, these stereotypes, right, that happen for black women and not necessarily other people. So the angry black woman stereotype, X, Y, and Z. Like, have you all experienced any of that in schools or in your life period? Have you been looked at as too angry or too whatever?
No, I wouldn't say angry. There is a stereotype of us being very loud at some times. I'm like, oh, like, you're not loud. Like, you're whitewashed. And I'm like,
wow.
Wow. I think it's like very hard to like live, and people always try to equate certain things with you, and it's like, okay, so maybe possibly sometimes I am those things, but why can't I be other things as well? Like, why is it so bad if I get angry? Like, why is it so bad if I have emotions too? Like, I can't feel sadness, I can't feel pain. Like, is that so wrong? Like, just because I'm black, like I have no right to feel those emotions? That makes no sense.
You think it's an uncomfortableness? Like when they say we're loud, or we're vocal. Do you think that that's like an uncomfortableness? because they've been conditioned to assume that when Black people step into a space, that we bring a certain kind of energy that's unpredictable. Because the way that they responded right here in the good old IE to when predominantly white people were at Victoria Gardens, well, not Victoria Gardens, but Day Creek and Foothill, protesting their civil rights because we were sheltering in place. The response to them, Longhorn restaurant, and for everybody watching, I'm gonna need y'all not to eat at Longhorn, because when the predominantly white protesters were out there protesting, sheltering in place, Longhorn wanted to feed them. They were out there walking in the streets. Walking in the streets. We're not talking about waiting for the crosswalks, because I went and parked my car because I wanted to witness this. Walking in the streets, and Longhorn Steakhouse was feeding them. But when Black Lives Matter and Let Me Breathe protests started to started to happen right there on Day Creek and Foothill in Rancho Cucamonga, Longhorn Steakhouse, you never walked out to feed anybody.
Wow.
Why not?
Yeah.
What's the difference? It's a protest, right? And they were a lot more. There was barely any cops out there, y'all. When civil rights were being violated for shelter in place. Barely.
Yeah.
Any.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it not from what I heard, because I went and parked my car and watched. And I was like, wow. Yeah. But when they were out there, like as I was driving up there, you could just see the police setting up
helicopters.
Helicopters? Really? But that never happened. And so when you say we're loud or we're this or like we're like, how does this definition? How do you come up with this definition when predominantly white protesters were protesting with guns? Could we have stepped anywhere with a gun on our back, y'all?
Oops.
For all my white allies, right? Could we, with our protests, have stepped in any space with guns drawn on our backs in the state capitol, all in the cop's face?
That's not.
I'm sorry.
That's not right. That's not how being Black in a white space works.
Scream. It's the hurt, dude. It's the hurt. Like, cause you can't explain it. How do you explain it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, God.
Yeah. It's a passionate life we live in. It's a passionate life we live in.
And
there's not. Besides going and doing what we have to do.
Doing what we have to do. They're white. That's why it was allowed to happen. That's why it was allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So going back to, yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of passion, but it's a lot of truth in it. You know what I'm saying? That's truth in your passion, because, like you're saying, and like was said in the beginning, right, Jasmine? Like it wasn't made for us. So it's not for us to go and have our guns on our backs at the Capitol and be in cop. It's not for us to do that, right? Because it wasn't made for. This is not a space that was made for us to do that. So before we end, I know we're like nearing the time. I wanted to ask, how, when you imagine a space that was made for you, right? Like reimagining this whole place, after all the protests, let's say all the demands are met, what does that look like for you? Like what is an America that allows Black people to breathe?
I don't necessarily think the space that I'm looking for I can find here. Like, I honestly do consider moving abroad someday, because I literally, like, it's been 401 years. Like, what if the space was going to be created, it would have been created by now. So I don't think the space is here. I don't think white people would allow that space to exist, unfortunately. So I don't know.
I don't know, it's really hard to vision.
Mm.
But I agree with Jasmine. I'm trying to gotta go.
Yeah. And what about for you, Wendy? And especially coming from like a mom aspect, what would that look like? Or do you think it's possible here?
I don't know anymore. I had a friend who some years ago, I forget, something had happened. I think it was after Tamar Rice, and we were talking about our sons. And I don't know, Jalen was, God, I can't remember how old Jalen was, but I remember driving Jalen to school and just having a conversation with him about, now that he was like 11 years old, he had been like 11 at that point, how the world was going to see him. And he had incidents before, but I don't think I'd ever been that blunt. And I remember even when I was telling my friend about the conversation I had with Jalen, she was like, dude, we really just need to go. Like, they don't want us here. And, you know, there was a part of me that was kind of like, well, we're established here. But the crazy thing is that now when I look at it, like, that doesn't even matter. Because will we ever be free? Will we ever be free in a space that never wanted us here in the first place? Will we ever be free? And so does that mean that we don't fight the good fight? Does that mean that we don't protest? Does that mean that we don't, you know, vote to change laws, right? Because it's not just about who is the president. It's about who are the captains and the police chiefs and the judges, and who are we giving our voice to when we choose to not participate, right? And so that's the other part, is like, how do we create a space where we can belong when we have so many people who don't want to participate in creating that space on both sides, right? Within whiteness, but then amongst ourselves. That's, I don't know. I don't know if by the time Jalen graduates from college, if America will be, or the US will be, my home. I don't know. Or do I go somewhere else and create a safe space for my family for us to thrive? I really don't know at this point. And that's sad when I'm 40 and I'm thinking about completely uprooting my entire life within the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. But
oh, go on. No, go on.
I think that's a reality that a lot of people are dealing with. I know a lot of people in my family have been talking about it too. Like, can we create that space here? Or do we have to totally move somewhere different to find it? I think the question still is the same, even if we move or if we stay. What does that look like for us? What does a safe space for us look like, right? Even if we moved to the UK, even if we moved to Africa, what does it look like for us? And it's a unique position that Black Americans are put in, because where is our space? Where is it? Is it back in Africa where we've never been, where we don't know the ties to? Or is it here where we've always been, but the ties, they were never here either, and they don't want us here either? It's interesting position.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted your take on, you know, what would it look like? What would the perfect place look like for you?
I don't even know where I'd look for it, because it's never been presented as an opportunity. Like, I literally have no clue. Like, what would I want? I don't know.
Yeah.
a good question and definitely like something to ponder and think about. Like, if a space existed for us, what would it look like?
Right. Because I'm tired of telling them to put their heads down. That's why I started, being vocal and kind of doing these talks. I'm not telling them to put their head down anymore. That's why when she said about the protest that she wanted to do the protest, and my initial reaction was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my baby? Okay, so now let me think about how to protect her just so she can speak up, right? So she can have a voice. Because I'm not willing to tell her to put her head down no more. I'm not willing to tell my kids to put their heads down. I'm not willing to tell them to not be vocal, right? And not speak when something's not right. Like, I'm not willing to tell them that anymore. But I also know that puts them at risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That puts them at risk to tell them not to put their head down.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So what do I do, right? What do I do?
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question? Do you think that, because there's clearly a generational gap, and so like I said, we're a very uniquely blended family. So like Jasmine's parents were older parents. They were in their 50s when they passed away. And so when her mom passed away, she had us, but then she also has her grandparents, so it's like this collective raising. But her grandparents are also older, right? So it's like I'm closer in age, so to speak, to their generation. But I'm just wondering how, with the stories that we've all kind of shared with you guys, like, how do you shape your own opinion of what it's like to be Black in a white space? Because your grandparents are in their 70s. Her her parents were in their 50s, and I'm 40. Right? So it's like you have like a very and then my grandmother, who was around all the time, their Gigi, she was 98 when she passed. So I'm just wondering how, like, you guys have been fortunate to have a very widespread of generations to influence you. Do you think that's influenced how you operate as being Black in a white space? I don't know. Or do you think it's helped shape how you operate?
Yeah, I think the stories from like our ancestors, like all of that gives us like kind of a blueprint as to how to survive in this world. So I don't know, like always, like just listening and just taking information from different people, despite their age, whatever their age is just kind of like, okay, here are all the stories, here are all the tools from other people, and I have to take that and implement it in my own life.
And also to the Black community.
What do you mean by that?
Giving back program. Well, I think for me, I know what I want to do in my career. I want to be a veterinarian, so I want to implement a program for other STEM young Black women that are in STEM. I want to implement like a mentoring program, because I know for me, I don't have a mentor right now. It's kind of hard to find a mentor. So I wanted to implement like just giving back to the community. I have a program for Black women in STEM so they can have that guidance. So I'm all about giving back to the Black community, taking notes and getting back.
Oh, we love to see it.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
We love to see it.
Man, yeah. That's crazy.
Just taking from what you've learned and other people have given to you, and being able to give that back so that other people don't have to go through. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It's crazy because this is the first time I've heard her like vocalize it this way. And that's where the whole dilemma comes in, because in order for her to do that, she has to be vocal. And so now I know that puts her at risk again, because people don't necessarily like that. That's why certain programs are kind of shaped and built the way they are. I feel, to keep certain people out. So there's an excitement, but then there's also this part that worries me because there's yet another difficult road ahead. She's going to be a young Black woman trying to do something that the world may not be ready for her to do.
Right.
So there's excitement, and then it's overtaken almost by this sense of like, so now I got to protect her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the struggle, I think, with having adult children is I just want to protect them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I know that is what a lot of Black parents and Black caretakers are experiencing right now. I know my mom, even knowing the work that I do as a youth organizer, and knowing that means that I will be involved in a lot of the things that are happening. She's like, I mean, do you have to? But okay, are you going to? Like, but wait, like, you know what I mean? So it's a lot of like wanting to say, no, just stay home. But also, like you're saying, knowing that just what can you do?
What can you do?
Yeah. What can you do?
What can you do other than they've all said to me at some point, it started with my oldest, the 22-year-old, don't you trust who you've raised? My 16-year-old Jalen said it to me the other night when I was worried about the protest going to happen on Friday, just yesterday. He was like, Mom, don't you trust who you raised? Like, and I'm like, yeah. I do. I don't trust the world that I got to keep sending y'all out into. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't trust the world. So before we wrap up, I know a bunch of people are jumping on. You keep yawning.
Sorry.
My child,
it's early.
It's early. Yeah. Girl, it's 11 a.m. Anywho,
early.
That's the mom of me. Like, did you just yawn for the fourth time on camera? Okay, but if there's any questions before we wrap up, we got a few more minutes. Let me see. I'm gonna pull up. Do we have any questions? I know we got a lot of comments. But any questions on Facebook? I know there's a little bit of a delay. But are there any questions from anyone?
I know I have one over here. Someone texted me asking, this is being recorded. And are you going to post it to your page or to your YouTube or anything so that they can share out?
Absolutely. It's being recorded. Just like last week's, when I did it with my son, it was recorded and then it was shared. Woohoo, we up to 1,800 views. So make sure you keep sharing because this is about educating. And then I also will edit it up a little bit and put it on my YouTube channel. And I'll make sure that I share that so that this can be shared. I mean, really, the whole purpose for this is to create a resource and a tool for those who want to learn and listen and really hear our hearts. You get to hear what the conversations that we have amongst ourselves that we don't generally share. But I think that white America needs to hear this. They need to hear the hurt and the frustration and not just the anger, but the hurt and the frustration, and look past the anger and be able to see the hurt and the frustration.
And I think a reason why I was excited when you started doing this series, so to speak, is because it's important for, the Black community and Black caretakers, Black parents to understand, hey, these are the conversations, these are the ways you can have these conversations with your own children. You know what I mean? Or the ones that you love and you care for. Like, it's not just you all who are experiencing it, and it's not that it's an easy conversation to have all the time. So yeah, that's very important too.
Yeah. Do you guys have any last words?
Right. Let's not forget, we still going through a pandemic. My favorite line to say. Yeah.
T. You good? You straight? Any last words, Jewel, before I close us out?
Stay Black, y'all.
I think that my last thing that I want to say is people have like there's a lot of opinions about what's going on, right? Particularly the way that the protests are being portrayed, the way that the way that some things are happening within the protests. I'm not even going to, call it rioting and looting, just things that are happening within the protest. And what I want to say to my people specifically is that, let's not focus on the way that we are being portrayed. Let's focus on the opportunity that's being presented. If a grocery store happens to be burned down in your community, let's think about ways to recreate that space for us. So they don't want to come back to our community. What are we going to do about it? Right? If certain places don't want to build stores, what are we going to do about it? There's so many women who, or people, not just women, but there's so many people with so many talents, right? Let's think about pooling our resources, right? Let's think about how do we recreate Black Wall Street, right? Which, by the way, they burned down after the 1918 pandemic. They burned down because they were upset that they were thriving when other people were struggling. So they went and burned down Black Wall Street. But how do we recreate that? So instead of looking at what's happening, right? Because like I said before, a lot of these companies have insurance because that's what you do when you're in business. You have insurance. You don't buy a brand new car and not put insurance on it. So instead of us looking at how it's being portrayed with the riot and the looting, why don't we look at the opportunities that may be presented for us to be able to go and recreate and reimagine our spaces? So for Black people, let's not get lost in the presentation of this, right? Let's not get lost with the Candace Owens. They can have her. I said it. They can have her. Blexit and all. And if you want to come on my post and wreak havoc, I will delete you because I don't wreak havoc on nobody else's post. So anywho, let's not focus on the portrayal and let's look at the opportunity, because that's what I, as a Black businesswoman owner, that's what I really want to start doing. And I've been talking to other people who want to be in business. What opportunity is this going to present to you? So as always, you guys, share. If you do have questions and comments, I always go back and ask. Love and blessings, y'all. Love and blessings. Have a great rest of y'all Saturday. Bye-bye, everybody.